pray that today you help us to understand that we need to prepare very seriously for his soon coming. May you speak to us through your word. Help us to do your will in the time we have left until his return. This is our prayer. In his name, amen. Once upon a time, there was a businessman. And this businessman was about to go on a trip, business trip, without telling his wife the date of his return. As he was walking to the car, his wife told her son, "Son, your father is leaving, and he never told us the day he will come back so that we may prepare for him." So the son ran to the father. "Daddy, my mother would like to know the date you will come so that we may be ready for you." This was about in January, the end of winter. And then the father told his son, "Son, go tell your mom that when you see trees, leaves changing colors, the day you will see leaves falling, that's the day I will come." The son went to his mother, told her what Daddy told him. And then they waited. And one day, it was about the fall, the son was playing outside. Oh, he saw leaves changing colors. He came to his mom. "Mom, you know what? Daddy is going to come because leaves are changing colors. I see yellow, pink, and he's coming." The mother said, "Son, the leaves have not fallen yet." And another day, the leaves were falling on the ground. And the son came, told his mother, "You know what? The leaves now are falling. Yes, he's coming." They prepared for his return. And as he promised, he came. Today, I'm going to take you on a scripture journey to show you and prove to you from the Bible that Jesus will come before the end of the year. Not after the end of the year, but before the end of the year. Okay. It was working for me. Now I don't know what's going on. Since the ascension of Christ, a debate has been going on as to whether the festivals and the feasts of the Old Testament are still relevant. 2 weeks ago, we had a celebration of Passover. They call it Easter. But you can't find Easter in the Bible. In the Bible, it's Passover. I saw many people churched, unchurched. Those who believe in Jesus, those who don't believe, they were celebrating Easter. All of them. But do they really know what Easter means or no, Passover? Are these practices necessary to keep today? Some argue that these festivals and feast days had a special significance to the Israel of the Old Testament. So they should still have similar special significance to spiritual Israel of the end of time. God outlined his plan of redemption in symbols, type and antitype. Always. The Bible is clear about how the Lord gives his people many examples of type and antitype. The type or symbol represents the antitype or fulfillment of the symbol. It's good to note that the antitype is always greater than the type. The exodus of Israel from Egypt, which is a type, was the greatest event in the Old Testament. God called Israel out of Egypt in order to take them to the promised land. It is interesting to note that the substantiating argument for the release of the Israelites revolved around the Sabbath. Pharaoh was not letting Israel rest as God commanded to do. So God called his people to come out of Egypt, which was long governed by satanic religions and pagan ideologies. Revelation 18 speaks of another exodus, a spiritual exodus. Revelation 18, verses 1 to 2, and then verses 4, 8. At the end of time, the Lord calls his people to come out of Babylon. The Bible describes Babylon as a place that is become the habitation of devils and the hold of every foul spirit and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. All what we are saying is in connection with the sanctuary. Remember, in the sanctuary, we had two laws. There was God's law, written by his finger. This law was kept inside the ark. And there was also the book of law, written by Moses. This was placed aside near the ark. The God's law, written by his finger, is eternal. As God is eternal, because that's his character. But this other law, the ceremonial law, would come one day to an end when the type would meet the antitype. When the antitype shows up, the type disappears. The type is no more. If you have the original copy of something, why should you cling to the copy when you have the original? The original is more reliable. My eyes are dim. I can't see well. So I need to. Everything's falling apart on me. There's another call. God wanted his people to come out of Egypt because Pharaoh did not allow them to worship God as God had commanded. Today, God's people, somewhere in the world, are not allowed to do what God of heaven wants them to do. They're trapped in sophistries and lies around the world. God is making the last call to these people. Come out, my people. Time has come. Come out. If you want to know where Jesus is today, where would you go? If you wanted to know where Jesus is? The Bible? Yes, we read in Revelation chapter 14 that blessed are those who follow Jesus, the Lamb, where he is in the sanctuary. In the sanctuary. Some people are turning their back on the cross and they go back to these feasts. But they forget that Jesus is the antitype. All these feasts that were celebrated by the Jews, the Hebrews, were shadows of something greater to happen someday. The institution of Passover Now the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be your beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. You can read the rest in your own time. God is telling Israel, I have my own calendar. I want to give you. This calendar will be different from the calendar of Egyptians. It's my calendar. And the event that will mark the beginning of this calendar is the Passover. I don't want to go deep into this, but a lamb will be killed, and then the blood will be sprinkled on the post of the doorpost. That house with doorpost, with blood on the doorpost, the angel will pass over. Will not destroy the firstborn in that family. That's the lamb representing Jesus Christ. What's going on here? The children of Israel, having spent more than 400 years in Egyptian captivity, they are about to be delivered. God instructs them through Moses and Aaron to take a blameless lamb and sacrifice it. And when you sacrifice that lamb, you will take some of the blood and put it on the two doorposts and on the lintel of the house. So, we have this Passover, but if you read further, you find out that this Passover was one of the feasts. In fact, God gave them 7 feasts to celebrate. Passover, the feast of unleavened bread, the feast of first fruits, the feast of the weeks, the feast of trumpets, the day of atonement, and then, lastly, the feast of tabernacles. The sacred year of the Jews was, I don't know, you say cyclical or was just, every year. You begin with the Passover, you end with tabernacles, and then you start over again. It was going on like this. And then, until Jesus appeared on the scene. Jesus is baptized in the Jordan by John the Baptist. And after his baptism, he's taken into the wilderness to be tempted. He conquered through the scripture. You can read this in Matthew chapter 4, verse 1 to verse 11. So Jesus begins his ministry. We read in Luke chapter 4, 14 to 21, in the power of the Spirit, Jesus returns to Galilee, where he had been brought up, and his custom, as his custom was, he goes into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stands up to read, he was handed the book of the prophet Isaiah. And when he had opened the book, he found the place where it was written, these words that Brother Harvey read to you. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. Who can tell me what the acceptable year of the Lord means? Anyone here? Do you know what it means? I've been reading this ever since I was a young boy, but I never understood what it was. And I was searching, studying. Something dawned on my mind. God has a year. This is a year that he instituted in Leviticus, in Exodus chapter 12, beginning with the Passover. This year marked with seven events that would remind the Israelites different steps in their salvation. So Jesus, he came to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. Then he closed the book and gave it back to the attendant and sat down. And the eyes of all who were in the synagogue were fixed on him. And he began to say to them, he sat down, and then they were just fixing their eyes on him, and then he stood up. He said, what I've told you. Let's read this. Today, this scripture is fulfilled in you hearing. Today, as I said before you, as I begin my ministry, I'm the antitype. Of all these feasts that you have been observing since the time you left Egypt. So, this verse, this passage, it's a quotation from Isaiah chapter 61, verse 1 and 2. So, in other words, Jesus here, as he begins his ministry, he inaugurates the antitypical year of the Lord, which will never be cyclical or cyclical, I don't know how you pronounce it, but cyclical. You see? And then he begins this year. So his first coming, and this year he will end it with his second coming. There's no other, after that, there's no other thing. That's why the time we are living in, we should take our salvation very seriously. I will show you that there's no time left. At this very juncture, Jesus breaks up the annual cycle of Jewish feast type and inaugurates the antitypical year of the Lord. Remember, the antitype is always greater than the type. the original is preferable to the carbon copy because it is more reliable. We will see how all these 7 Jewish feasts were fulfilled in the life and ministry of Jesus on earth and in heaven. The Feast of Passover. Jesus fulfilled the Passover prophecy that said not a single bone should be broken, and also fulfilled the requirement of having been pierced, just as the Passover lamb would have been pierced. Remember, Jesus died the same hour the Passover lamb was slain. When they came, before Sabbath began, they came to see those who are alive so that they can break their legs. Jesus was already dead. Blameless. No bone was broken, as prophesied years before. There are some specific aspects we need to look at here before we move on. The Passover was a memorial to the final events before the Exodus, when the angel of death passed over Israel. On the 10th day, Nisan 10, the people of Israel had to take a perfect lamb into their home and let it stay in the home with them. 4 days later, on the 14th day of Nisan 14th, the family had to kill the lamb in the evening. They then had to put the blood of the lamb on the side posts and lintel of the door of the home where the lamb was going to be eaten. That night, they had to offer the lamb as a burnt offering and roast the lamb in bitter herbs and eat it with unleavened bread. They had to eat all of the meat and were not allowed to take any out of the house. Lastly, while they were preparing or eating it, they were not allowed to break a single bone of the lamb. If you read Corinthians 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7, Jesus is our Passover. So we don't need another Passover, because he is the antitype of what the Jews were observing. So the next day is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Leaven in the Bible means sin. The only person on earth who lived a sinless life is Jesus Christ. So he dies on Friday, and then during the Sabbath hours, he rests in his grave as the unleavened bread. Just says in John chapter 6, verse 54:6, I'm the bread of life. Whoever will feed on me will never go hungry. So, the feast of the first fruits, which symbolizes the resurrection of Jesus Christ. On Sunday in the morning, Jesus came out of the grave. not only himself. You can read in Matthew chapter 27, many others were risen together with him. They are in heaven. We don't know them. We don't know their names. They're only mentioned in the Bible. But if you read Matthew chapter 27, you will see this. The Feast of the Weeks, which happened 50 days after the day of resurrection. So what happened on the 50th day after Jesus' resurrection? Jesus, after his resurrection, spent 40 days with his disciples. As he was ascending to heaven, he told them to go back to Jerusalem and wait. For how long? For 10 days. If you take 40 days and 10 days, 50 days, something happened in heaven. And then God communicated it on earth. Jesus was inaugurated in heaven after his ascension as the high priest. And then the Holy Spirit was released as a proof that something happened in where? In heaven. And then comes the Feast of Trumpets. The first three feasts are connected with the first coming of Jesus Christ. The last three, the first four feasts, are connected with the first coming of Jesus Christ. The last feast, three feasts, the Feast of Trumpets, the Day of Atonement, the Tabernacles, are connected with his second coming. So, what do we see here? After the Pentecost, up until the fall, there is a summer. The weather is hot. There's drought in some parts of the world. This is very significant in the life of the church after Pentecost. I was not reading, but listening to Pastor Stephen Ball talking about these feasts. And on number 13, the anchor clause of Hebrews feast. If you want, you can just go home and go to YouTube. You can listen to it. This is what he says. After the Feast of Pentecost in the late spring, there was no other feast until early fall. During the summer period, there was no rain, and the weather was very hot and dry. This period in the history of Israel represents the wilderness wandering of Israel in the desert before they entered the promised land and their persistent apostasy. While they were in the wilderness, of course, this long summer drought was then broken by the Feast of Trumpets. The Feast of Trumpets is briefly mentioned in Leviticus 23, verses 23 to 25. The purpose of the Feast of Trumpets was to announce the upcoming Day of Atonement, to encourage Israel to prepare for the upcoming Day of Atonement, which was a great day of judgment for Israel. Tell me, you have a case in court. Maybe the hearing is set for a certain day. On the eve of that hearing, are you going to rejoice? Are you going to dance? Are you going to party? What are you going to do? You are going to meditate upon your case. The trumpet, and then Day of Atonement. Where are we now? Where are we now? Tell me. Where are we in the stream of time of prophecy? Atonement. Jesus has been in the most holy place in heaven for 173 years. Oh, when I saw this, I said, Lord, forgive me. Because I've been partying. I've been enjoying life. I don't know that the judgment is going on. Some people don't know. They don't know. This is a time we need to do heart searching. Time we need to study the Bible. Time we need to, I don't know, let me put it in my pocket. Time to change the way we live. And then the purpose of the Feast of Trumpet was to announce the upcoming Day of Atonement, to encourage Israel to prepare for the upcoming Day of Atonement, which was a great day of judgment for Israel. Now, when was the Feast of Trumpets fulfilled in history? As mentioned before, the purpose of the Feast of Trumpets was to announce the upcoming of the Day of Atonement. What happened after the day of Pentecost? In the antitypical year of the Lord. Now, that's where we are. We don't go back to those feasts, Jewish feasts, but we are now in the real year of the Lord that He began and that He's going to end when He comes. So, the church, remember the 1st, 2nd century, 3rd century, Constantine, remember 1260 days, years, prophetic years. What happened? The Dark Ages. Dark Ages. So, the book of Revelation refers to this as 1260 years, during which time the witnesses witnessed in sackcloth, and there was no rain during that period, a long, hot, and dry period, spiritually speaking. During this period, the Sabbath was changed from Saturday, from the 7th day, to Sunday, to the first day of the week. Many pagan rituals were brought in the church and baptized Christians because they have Jesus in them. Many things happened during this time. There were no feasts during that period. This long period of apostasy and drought was interrupted by the Feast of Trumpets, announcing the soon coming of the Day of Atonement in the year 1844. Fulfillment of the Feast of Trumpets was the Millerite movement, which announced that the hour of God's judgment had come. They announced that people needed to prepare themselves in a special way for the Day of Atonement. Is this what we are doing now, today? Are we studying? Are we searching our hearts? Are we searching the Bible as it should? Yes, they were mistaken on the event that was supposed to take place at the end of 2,300 years. But their calculations were correct. But anyway, there was a revival. This happened in Africa, in Europe, in Australia, in Asia, in America, everywhere. There was a revival. Something great was happening. On that date, October 22nd, 1844, Jesus changed roles. He became our high priest in heaven. He has been ministering there for over 173 years, pleading for us. But we don't care. We go out partying. We do whatever we want. We don't do his will. And this is very painful, because we should be careful and be serious about our salvation. What did they do, the Millerites? They gathered. They afflicted their souls. They sold their possessions. They confessed their sins. They fasted. They studied the scriptures. What am I worried about these days? Retirement. I'm investing everything I can in my retirement. This changed my attitude. Completely changed. I need to invest in heavenly bank. The money that you deposit in heavenly bank will never depreciate. Never. That's why there's evangelism going on. So what part are we playing? What role are we playing in this evangelism? Are we stingy with what God has given us? We need to change. I need to change. Remember, when I preach to you, I first preached to myself. I'm concerned about my salvation. So, they studied the scriptures. They paid their own debts. Guess what? They used their money to pay other people's debts. And they even left their crops in the fields. There was a brotherly love, which we need today as the people of God coming to the end of times. So, they truly believed that Jesus was going to come on October 22nd, 1844. They personally prepared for the Day of Atonement, even though they misunderstood the event that was going to take place. Atonement, but they also proclaimed. They did all this, but on top of this, they also proclaimed the message. Do you have a message to proclaim? Do you have a message? The three angels' message. Because the last sign, if you go to Matthew chapter 24, Jesus outlined the signs of time that will happen before he comes. The last sign is this gospel will be preached to the whole world. And this gospel is no other than the three angels' messages. Are we serious? When I see Wednesdays, it's prayer meeting, 3 people, 4 people. It breaks my heart. Sometimes you don't see me, I cry. When I see on Sabbath, from 4 to 5, we're studying, 3 people are there studying the spirit of prophecy. Patriarchs and prophets. But how many people come there? 3. I don't judge you. Forgive me, I'm not God. God knows what you are up to, what you are doing during that time. We need to gather together, study God's word to encourage each other. This is a time to wake up from our spiritual slumber. And then the Day of Atonement. As I told you, the Day of Atonement is the day of judgment, pre-Advent judgment. It's not time to party. It's not time to do all kinds of things that we do today. It's time to sit down and ponder about our relationship with Jesus, who is coming soon. Amen. If he comes, will he take me? What would you do if you knew that Jesus would come before the end of the year, of this year? What would you do? Huh? There are many things I will do. I will give my money to enhance God's kingdom. I will be present at every meeting that church organizes. I will be wherever Jesus is preached. I will go to my neighbors, tell them the good news, but Jesus is coming. Is this what we are doing? Yes, some are doing it, but others, we're not doing it. So, and then after the Feast of Tabernacle, the Feast of Tabernacle was not only commemorative, but typical. It not only pointed back to the wilderness sojourn, but as the Feast of Harvest, it celebrated the ingathering of the fruits of the earth. This is the only time the Israelites could rejoice after they have been accepted. The high priest is out of the most holy place. They have been accepted. Their sins have been forgiven. They can rejoice. They can make merry because they have been accepted by God. And then they would start all over again. But this time, in the antitypical year of the Lord, there's nothing after tabernacle, the Feast of Tabernacles. And Jesus cannot come at the end, but will come before this feast, because it means that when his ministry in heaven is finished, he will take off his priestly garments. He will cast away this I don't know how to say it, but he will come out of that room, of that compartment, and then we say, it is finished. It is done. And then, according to Daniel chapter 12, verse 1, he will come to deliver his people. This is a summary: Passover, crucifixion, type, antitype, unleavened bread, Christ in the grave, first fruits, Christ's resurrection, Feast of Weeks, Pentecost, harvest of souls, Feast of Trumpets, Second Advent movement, Day of Atonement, pre-Advent judgment. That's who we are. That's who we are. Feast of Tabernacles, homegoing at last, Second Advent. The Day of Atonement. Today, oh no, I'm sorry, it's not for April, 29th April 2017, we are here. We are here. In Daniel, we are in the toes. Daniel chapter 2, we are in the toes. Daniel chapter 11, we are in the verses 40, 45. But here, that's who we are. Jesus cannot come after, but he come before this feast of tabernacle. That's true. Gathering. We'll be together in heaven. That's it. That's it. And the Feast of Tabernacles, it's good to note that the antitypical year of the Lord is not cyclical. Jesus has begun it, and he will end it. Its beginning was marked by his first coming, and its end will be marked by his second coming. Revelation 22, verse 7, 10 to 11 says, "Behold, I am coming quickly. Blessed is he who keeps the words of the prophecy of this book." And he said to me, "Do not seal the words of the prophecy of this book, for the time is at hand. He who is unjust, let him be unjust. Still, he who is filthy, let him be filthy still. He who is righteous, let him be righteous still. He who is holy, let him be holy." Brothers and sisters, as I told you, this is not a hoax. Jesus will come before the end of the year. Which year? Not this year, but the year of the Lord. The year of the Lord. And we are very close. There's no time left. If there's anything we need to do for the Lord, it's now, not tomorrow. Yes. Yes. Not tomorrow. Now. Because I don't know how the time between his coming and the Feast of Tabernacle in gathering, I don't know. But there's no time. In fact, for me, there's no time. Maybe today, maybe the last day you see me. Tomorrow I may be sleeping in my grave. Who knows? Who knows? The time we have to do what we need to do for the Lord, it's now. The time we need to experience what the Millerites experienced, it's now. We should not, cling to our world possessions. These are passing away. It's time to invest in the banks of heaven, where money we invest, we never depreciate. May God help us to know that we don't have time to lose. Jesus is coming soon. I'm not here to set date. As that businessman didn't tell his son, "Go tell your mother that I will come on October 12th." No, he just told him, when you see leaves changing colors, trying to fall, now starting falling on the ground, you will know that I'm coming. Jesus gave us everything. There's no way. We should not waste our time celebrating Christmas, Passover, whichever. I don't know. This is time to take our salvation seriously. May God help us to do so that we may fulfill His purpose, His will. And when He comes to gather His loved ones, we will be among them. And now we rejoice forever. My purpose today was to show you that there's no need of celebrating those feasts. There were times. When type meets antitype, the type is over, disappears. We just focus on the antitype. The antitype is Jesus. All this is about Jesus. May be we drawn to Him today than ever before, so that wherever we are, we may ponder and think about our relationship with Him who is coming soon. Because there are some who think that they know Him, but one day He will tell them, "Depart from me, you evildoers. I don't know." They will claim what they have been doing, but He will insist, "I don't know you. Depart from me." May God help us today to know that Jesus is coming before the end of the year. Maybe you were troubled with my subject, but as you see it now, it's very simple. May God help us to understand it and try to stay alive, awake, focused. That's right, because Jesus is coming before the end of the year. God bless you all.